Lots of questions this Sunday for the President-elect's incoming Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus. Mr. Priebus, thank you for joining us again this morning.
Hey, good morning, George.
Let's begin with that shot across the bow of the CIA from your transition. It kind of startled intelligence officials. How is President Trump going to work with intelligence agencies if he doesn't trust their work?
Well, he trusts the CIA. Look, George, this is about 17 or so unnamed agencies and an unnamed report that based a report on something that is totally false. The RNC was not hacked. And so the report is basically trying to make the case that the RNC was hacked, the DNC was hacked, and the only emails that came out were DNC emails. So therefore, this is the conclusive report that the Russians or whoever was doing the hacking.
You say he trusts the CIA. Then why did your transition? Hold on a second. Well, then why did you put out a statement questioning the CIA?
Because the report was, excuse me, George. The entire report is based on unnamed sources who are perhaps doing something they shouldn't be doing by speaking to reporters or someone talking out of line about something that is absolutely not true. The FBI we contacted the FBI months ago when the DNC issue came about. They've reviewed all of our systems. We have hacking detection systems in place. And the conclusion was then, as it was again 2 days ago when we went back to the FBI to ask them about this, that the RNC was not hacked. So here we are now debating and talking about a story based on something that isn't true. And we're in this circuitous
that's only one element. Hold on a second.
About something that's not true.
That's only one element of the story. I mean, that's what perhaps the FBI told you the RNC wasn't hacked. But do you know where all of your data was stored? Could have been stored in other archives. And are you confident that other intelligence agencies haven't reached the conclusion that some of your data was indeed hacked, perhaps personal Gmail accounts?
I'm telling you as an actual source to you and the press, because you have no source otherwise other than an unnamed source that also concluded that everything else was inconclusive. I'm telling you as a source that to the best of my knowledge and based on conversations that the RNC has had with the FBI, that I know of no instance that you're describing involving the RNC or the RNC's data. So it's hard for me to have a conversation about something that I have no evidence to the contrary.
Do you know where all your data was stored?
We know where our data is stored, George. We do. And we have reviewed all of that data along with security experts, along with folks at the FBI, and they've told us that we have not been hacked. And when the story hit in the New York Times, our folks went back to, not me personally, our chief operating officer, went back to his contact at the FBI and again was assured that we were not hacked. So talking about this story, which, by the way, the story itself said was inconclusive, I don't know what to tell you. It is unbelievable that the press would run with unnamed sources about something that they agree was inconclusive, but ignore the fact that the actual people involved on the other side of this story are telling you it's not true.
Well, this comes on the heels of another report from the intelligence community. All 17 intelligence agencies did come to an agreement that Russia was trying to influence the elections without describing a motive. When I spoke to President-elect Trump about that back in October, he said he hadn't gotten the briefing. Has he been briefed now on those findings?
Listen, I'm not, by the way, George, as you know from working in the White House, it takes a long time. I'm not the president, so the president, has top secret clearance immediately. I don't. It takes time. So I'm not in those top secret meetings, nor would it be appropriate. The president can't tell me what's being said in a top secret meeting unless I have top secret clearance. I will eventually be in those meetings. But look, the Russians didn't tell Hillary Clinton to ignore Wisconsin and Michigan, okay? I mean, I know this is this insane analysis. She lost the election because her ideas were bad. She didn't fit the electorate. She ignored states that she shouldn't have, and Donald Trump was the change agent, okay? So this is all very interesting, but Donald Trump won in an electoral landslide that had nothing to do with the Russians.
Nobody here is questioning the victory. I want to know why President-elect Trump doesn't believe the conclusions of 17 intelligence agencies.
But you don't have a source. I mean, you're claiming that an unnamed report this is what I can't understand. Like, I think
No,
that
but hold on a second. No, Mr. No, I'm talking about the finding in October that is public now of 17 different intelligence agencies saying Russia tried to meddle with our elections. That's before this weekend.
That's not true, George. You don't know that conclusively. The report also said that there wasn't agreement among the 17 agencies. When the FBI came out, they came out when there was a conclusion on the DNC. Their conclusion was very clear, and they made it public. Now, if the CIA
that's what I'm talking about. That's precisely the conclusion I'm talking about. But the president says he doesn't accept that either.
But they didn't conclude that it was Russia, George. But they didn't conclude it was Russia. I don't care. Listen, I don't care if it's Russia or whoever. They shouldn't. We're going to protect Americans. We don't want these countries or whoever else these people are hacking our country, our parties. We protect our Americans. We don't like it. We're against it. But what I can't do is have an intelligent conversation with you about a report in the New York Times that is unnamed, inconclusive, and based on something that isn't true.
I'm asking you about the conclusions that were made public back in October. But let's move on now. There's a statement just out this morning from several members of the Senate, both Democrats and Republicans, including the Democratic leader Charles Schumer, John McCain, the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and Lindsey Graham, also a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. They write that recent reports of Russian interference in our elections should alarm every American, and they say Democrats and Republicans must work together to investigate this. Do you support that investigation in the Senate right now?
I support in anything that we can do, including investigations or otherwise, to protect Americans from foreign interference in all of our good work that we need to do in the United States, whether it be our elections, whether it be our businesses, whether it be our electric grids. We have to protect America. So I'm all for finding out how in the world this stuff is happening and so that we can put systems in place to protect Americans. Again, we don't like this. But I also want to make sure that when we debate these things that we actually have the facts that are very clear in front of us to have this debate.
I do think we have those facts, but you're saying you're now supporting this further investigation. So let's move on to the president-elect's
I'm supporting anything that we can do to find out how this stuff is happening. I think the president-elect also supports anything we can do to put an end to these sorts of incidents from taking place in our country.
And if it turns out that this investigation and the review ordered by President Obama conclusively determines that Russia was behind this, will President Trump retaliate?
Look, you're going to have to talk to President-elect Trump about that, but certainly we're going to do whatever that loaded word retaliate is, we're going to do everything we can in order to prevent all of this stuff from happening ever again. And I'm sure appropriate measures will be explored as to what to do if that is concluded to make sure that, number one, it doesn't happen again, and make sure that we put systems in place that protect Americans.
Let's talk about the president-elect's likely pick for Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, if that is indeed true. The New York Times is reporting that your colleagues Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner think Tillerson is, quote, in a different league from the other candidates. Is that your view, too?
I certainly think he's an incredible businessman, an American patriot, and somebody that I think has experience across the globe that very few people have. I also think we've got other great choices to make. The conclusion has not been made. There's no announcement that's coming today, George, as far as Secretary of State's concerned. So it's a little premature to be claiming that this is a done deal. But certainly Rex Tillerson is an American icon and businessman that I think is a pretty incredible guy.
Is this the right time for a Secretary of State who has close ties to Vladimir Putin?
Well, look, I mean, he's in the business of exploring and finding oil across the globe. And so you have to go where the oil's at. And the fact that he actually has a relationship with people like Vladimir Putin and others across the globe is something that we shouldn't be embarrassed by. It's something that I think could be a huge advantage to the United States. Look, it doesn't mean we're not going to be tough across the world. It doesn't mean that we're not going to always put America first in everything we do. But we have big problems in this world. And I don't think we can solve these big problems by making believe that people don't exist. They exist. We have to talk to people. Reagan talked to people across the world, and he was very successful in communicating. and treating people with dignity and respect, but putting America first in every single thing we do.
Senators like Ed Markey on the Democratic side, John McCain and Lindsey Graham on the Republican side promising tough questions. Any concerns about confirmation?
No, I don't. First of all, the pick hasn't been made, so I say that again. But no, we don't have concerns about confirmation. He's built one of the biggest companies in the world. But again, we'll find out whether it's him or someone else on the list. And so, listen, it's not a done deal, and it's premature, but I will tell you that I think this person is incredibly talented and could do a very good job as Secretary of State.
Finally, late this week, we learned that President-elect Trump intends to keep his executive producer title on Celebrity Apprentice. We know he's going to come out later this week and talk about how he's going to handle the overall conflicts of interest, perhaps with his businesses in the White House. Newt Gingrich said that this executive producer title is weird, and it does raise questions about possible conflicts. The FCC regulates NBC corporations could try to curry favor with the president by placing their products on the show, buying advertising. Isn't that an issue?
I don't think it's an issue. Look, it's not going to be sitting there producing The Apprentice. I can assure you of that. It's something that he owns. It's a title that he owns, but I'm telling you, he's going to be 100% focused in the White House. He's not going to be sitting in studio acting as the executive producer of The Apprentice. I think that's Mark Burnett, and that's the way it's going to be.
But he has decided to reject the advice of the Office of Government Ethics to divest from all of his businesses?
No, that's not true. You'll have to wait and see when he has this, when he concludes the very complicated ethics review and puts up the walls that he needs to put up for the family and the businesses, and they're working through that diligently, George. I can assure you of that. But this isn't just some easy weekend project. I mean, when you have hotels and businesses and retail space across the entire world, it takes time to unpack that and to put this in a place that makes sense for him and the family.
Mr. Priebus, thanks for joining us this morning.
You bet, George. Thank you.